have a few more folks have snuck in the room. We've got former Speaker Eileen Fillercorn. We have Delegate Kathy Tran. And fresh from the Equal Justice Initiative in Alabama, our Mayor, Justin Wilson. And I have, as a point of personal privilege, as to say, three people to announce from Team Ebbin. First, an alumni of Team Ebbin, Chris Lahan, my former chief of staff. And then I'm just going to tell a really quick story about how I found my current chief of staff, Henry Watkins. I went to a Democratic Party of Virginia meeting, and the American flag was falling off the pole onto the ground, which is a no-no. And I saw Henry scoop it up, and I went up to the party office afterwards, and he was folding the American flag properly, the way they teach you in Boy Scouts. I asked him if he'd been an Eagle Scout, and he said he had. So I asked him for his what he was doing. He was the intern for the Democratic Party. And I hired him, and 4 years later, he's still with me on one of the best hires I've made. And I'm also incredibly grateful and happy for the efforts of Matthew Montgomery, our new legislative assistant. So thank you, Matthew, for all your work. But I want to bring you greetings from the Brick Wall Caucus. This year, Governor Youngkin and Virginia Republicans demonstrated abysmal leadership, focusing on sowing division and rolling back our progress. And with one single vote, Senate Democrats blocked Youngkin's and House Republicans' dangerous plans that would have banned reproductive health care, froze the minimum wage, repealed voting rights, rolled back common sense gun violence prevention legislation, discriminated against LGBTQ Virginians, and harmed our environment. That's right, with just one vote, Senate Democrats stopped all these regressive policies from becoming law. And that brings us to why we're here today. Senator Warner's going to talk about 2022, and I know Congressman Beyer wants us to remember to vote now and early and often. But I want to talk just a little bit about why in 13 months, when every seat in the General Assembly is up, we're going to need all the help we can get. We have to maintain and expand our Democratic majority in the Senate with frontline candidates like Russet and Schuyler, and we will maintain and expand that majority. And with your help, we can invest heavily in key races. These will be some of the most expensive and competitive races, not just in Virginia, but across the country. Some of the top targets will cost up to $3 million. And Schuyler and Russet are not going to be able to dial all those phone numbers themselves. They're going to call us and ask us to help too. So they have my commitment. That's the tough news, that it's expensive. But the good news is that we've got great candidates, and we also have public opinion on our side. I can't emphasize that enough, that we can't let Governor Youngkin get the chance to pass his dangerous agenda. And speaking of Youngkin, it's clear that he's left Virginia in the rearview mirror for his own political aspirations. He's abandoned us and embraced some of the most extreme Republicans around the country, whether it's election denier Carrie Lake in Arizona or unabashed racist Paul LePage in Maine. Those are the people he chooses to campaign for. And just over a week ago, maybe it was about 2 weeks ago, Youngkin proposed cruel, discriminatory, anti-transgender student model policies. So what happened? Virginians across the Commonwealth have been standing up against this discriminatory policy. From northern Virginia to Southside, there were more than 80 student-initiated, student-led walkouts across the Commonwealth. Senator Sturvell and I witnessed over 1,400 students walk out at West Potomac High School and stand up for their fellow students. And the public comments are important. We're in a public comment period, and public comment on this policy has reached over 50,000 responses. Yep. And that's not counting all of you who haven't commented yet. We're going to go and do that. But Youngkin isn't stopping there. He continues to try and illegally remove Virginia from the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, turning back more than $450 million for flood mitigation and for helping combat the negative effects of climate change. He even tried to appoint Trump's EPA administrator to oversee our natural resources and environment. And at the time, I was the chairman of the Privileges and Elections Committee, and I had the honor of leading the fight against Youngkin's appointee. And for that, I received a reward, which was a record 9 vetoes. Senator Warner, you never vetoed 9 of anyone's bills, and you certainly didn't veto bills that you then signed the House counterpart at the same time. So I'll wear it as a badge of honor. And recently we've seen democratic momentum at the federal level. Thanks to Senator Warner and his colleagues, they've delivered the American Rescue Plan, the CHIPS Act to reinvigorate American manufacturing, the Infrastructure Act to provide funding, not just for infrastructure across the country, but just the other day he announced funding for a pedestrian crossing from Long Bridge to Navy Yard in D.C. And a mind-blowing climate investment of $369 billion. Which is start to take action on climate change that's been long overdue. And the Safer Communities Act for common sense gun control, and to confirm the first black woman on the Supreme Court. I overheard someone say yesterday we should call Democrats and Joe Biden the mailman because they deliver. And Senator Warner, you provided a template on passing meaningful legislation with a razor-thin Democratic majority, and we face the same circumstances in the Virginia Senate. I was proud to serve in your administration. You were a great governor. You've been a real leader in the U.S. Senate. Senator, everyone on this rooftop is ready to take your marching orders today as we evangelize with our friends and neighbors to get out the vote for our congressional delegation and across the country. So now let's hear it for our senior senator, Mark Warner.
Everybody for coming out. Skylar, Russell, it's great to see you. Do not expect this everywhere across the Commonwealth, where every other person is a Democratic elected official. I say that as a proud Alexandrian, and what an incredible crowd. I think it is a tribute to you, your leadership, your colleagues. Let me also tell you, as somebody who was smart enough to hire him in 2002 when he became governor, you've come a long way, man. Although you told me you're going to have all these pictures, I went through like 40 of them. There's only one picture of me in there. No, Adam has done, along with his colleagues in both the House and the Senate, and frankly, at the local elected level. I think his job is hard, my job is hard. The hardest job right now in America is being on the school board.
That's right.
And I want to thank you for that service. Post-COVID world, no matter what your position is, you're about to get grief. And, you know, in many ways, the heart of American democracy is that notion of citizen service. And I can't think of a job that more represents that than school boards. And the needness and some of the things that are taking place all across, not just Virginia, but across America, really makes me wonder whether people are still going to be willing to take on this service. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me also say, you know, Adam has charged me with giving you instructions for the 2022 races. Vote for Don Beyer. He's already left the Ethiopia community. We actually, it is a great honor for me, and I know we've got a lot of cameras going, so I'll have to be careful, Kevin Hall, how I say this. As my former communications director in both press secretary in the governor's office, communications director in my Senate office for a long time. I am extraordinarily lucky to be now the senior senator from Virginia. I love being governor. I've grown to love being in the U.S. Senate. I'm lucky at first, but to represent the Commonwealth, and particularly Northern Virginia, is a real gift. And I actually and I have only lorded this over my friend John Tester a couple times from Montana. I live closer to the Hill than any member of Congress, including Eleanor Holmes Norton. I beat out Don Beyer by 3 blocks. And, you know, the idea of, you know, Monday's coming in or Thursday when people rush to the airport and I've got that 20-minute drive is a real blessing. But it is a great, great honor. And please, we talk about what happened with the state Senate this year and 1 vote. I mean, everything we did in the U.S. Senate this year was with a no vote margin. And a lot of that, you know, most all of us here are Democrats, but a lot of it was done in a bipartisan fashion, and we still have to try to find common ground where we can. That doesn't mean you give up on your values, but it does mean trying to find common ground. And, you know, we are in the race of our lifetime this year in 2022. You know, the U.S. Senate is literally on the verge, one vote one way or the other. And unfortunately, our opponents are just awash with cash coming in these last couple of weeks. In Virginia, I think, you know, Don will not want me to say this, but I think he's in pretty good shape. But we've got 3 seats. I mean, Jennifer, I think, is in good shape, but don't let me, you know, please. Jennifer Wetson needs help. Abigail Spanberger is an incredible, incredible congressperson. Please, anybody down in Prince William County, I live part-time, as you know, in King George. That's part of her district now. Get out for Abigail. And you've got a little extra time or effort. You know, we have a very, very challenging seat in Elaine Leary's district. That district is being redistricted. The current governor is trying to weigh in a major way, so if you've got a little extra oomph, please help Elaine Leary get reelected. It is
Let's unzip out good, too.
Well, I'm all for that. I'm all for that. Never have, well, I won't say anything like that. But and you know, Adam did go through this litany of things. I mean, there have been many years where I kind of sheepishly come up here after the House has passed a whole lot of things and say, well, we're trying in the Senate. But we have put enormous, incredibly important points on the board. Matter of fact, I've been working relentlessly on this whole semiconductor bill. Literally for 1.5 years, 2 years, we would not build another semiconductor facility in America if we hadn't passed this. But if we have passed that, we're gonna make sure that we bring these jobs back to America. But I tell you, I want them to come to Virginia. But companies that are progressive and forward-leaning want to come to states that are welcome. They want to come to states or locations that are restricted. So the issues that Adam's talked about continuing that tradition in Virginia, that we welcome all, that we're inclusive, that we believe so strongly in the value of a good education, that no matter where you started in Virginia or in this country, everybody will have a fair shot. That is heart and soul of who we are as Virginians, as Democrats, as Americans. So, you know, I know in Virginia we have this tendency to always say this year's the most important year. Well, this year's the most important year until next year. Because everyone will be up at the local level, you know, obviously at the state Senate and state house, and they are razor thin margins. Let me conclude with this, which is, you know, and I really appreciate Russell's willingness to take this on. As the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, I have grown a great deal of affection and affinity for the incredibly brave men and women who serve almost always without recognition in our intelligence community. They do so much to keep our country safe. And we live in an enormously challenging time. I know the last couple of years has been hard. You know, Donald Trump, or as I refer to him, Voldemort. You know, COVID, the January 6th experience. I mean, there have been literally, I have to acknowledge, times when you kind of wonder, is this American experiment, 246 years old, of democracy and having your vote counted, having us being able to agree and disagree and do it respectfully, have a free press, is it going to win out when you see authoritarian regimes around the world? in seeming ways, Russia and China, move forward. But what has given me hope, and what keeps me going, has been, in many ways, the courage of the Ukrainian people. Who, when they were pressed, the easiest thing would have done was say, okay, we're just going to go along. But they are literally voting with their lives to say, we will put our lives in jeopardy to have the system that you have in America, and candidly probably take for granted. And we need to reinforce that notion that, we are the good guys. Our system, with all its flaws, is still the envy of the world. With all our challenges, we are still the only country in the world where you can come within, when you accept that citizenship, you are American, regardless of your heritage. And that call for freedom, I met with some of our friends from the Iranian American community. What is going on right now in Iran, where finally, led by women, people are standing up and saying, kind of authoritarian regime that tries to tell people how to dress, how to worship, who to believe in. That's not what the Iranian people want. I see as well, we can't talk about it here, but you see the restraints placed by the Communist Party on the Uyghurs or the people of Hong Kong. The truth of the matter is, democracy will always win out. But this country has always been the beacon of that democracy. So while we are under assault by forces and theories of the case that I can't imagine ever in my lifetime would have ever been promoted by major political figures, when you have a host of individuals running this year for Congress that literally deny the results of a free and fair election in 2020, we all have to. The notion of redoubling these efforts these last 3 or 4 weeks shouldn't have to come from me. It should come from our commitment to this great country and the fact that its greatest days are in front of it. So please, everyone, thank you for what you've done. Thank you for what you've done, so many of you done for me over the past 20 plus years. Thank you for giving my young Ebbin a chance to relatively young, go out and raise more money than he did in his bar mitzvah. Do all you can to make sure we maintain Democratic control in the House and the Senate, and let's make sure we add to our margins and take back the House next year in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Senator Warner, for being on your feet all weekend. It's been a long one for you, and for all that you're doing for our candidates across the country, too.